very misleading. And I still think 2020 he's going to be the full-time third baseman, but I see in his future about a 275 average, 6 home runs, 25 some RBIs in a 60-game season, which would translate around to 15 home runs and 75 RBIs in a full year. But he is awful defensively. Ke'Bryan Hayes is the guy. He's a top hitting prospect. He can field. He can do it all. So these 60 games, and what I ultimately would have liked to see is an open competition at third base between Hayes and Moran, but with the season now only 13 days away, and the first exhibition game is 1 week away, with Ke'Bryan Hayes not reporting, either due to a positive coronavirus test or an opt-out, it's clear that Moran is going to be the team's starting third baseman, unless, of course, he is the DH and they decide to start Phillip Evans at third base. That'll be discussion for a little bit later in the show. So, an opt-out, though, for Hayes would see nothing in 2020 and a golden opportunity miss. But if it's just a positive coronavirus test, we can assume that he would be back at some point during the 2020 season. Now, when it comes to this 60-game sprint, the Pirates and all 29 other teams are about to embark. Think about it this way. July 24th, the Pirates are in contention. They are tied for first place. They have 60 games. So the goal for every team, and I think the goal for the Pirates, is obviously to contend in 2020. And they have a very small window of opportunity, per se, between July 24th and August 31st to prove they're out of contention in General Manager Ben Cherington, or to prove they're in contention and to see what Cherington is going to do with that. Now, when it comes to Keone Kela, and that's why I mention that, is because Keone Kela is expected to be a potential trade chip at the deadline because he is a free agent after the 2020 season. The only caveat to his free agency is if Keone Kela elects to opt out instead of play. If he elects to opt out, he is Pirates property through 2021. And that leads to an interesting thought, a thought discussion. Would you rather have Keone Kela for 60 games in 2020 where it is realistic for them to compete? Or would you rather have Keone Kela in 2021? A full season of him where they may not compete. And the other question also is interesting to pose. So let's say that they're out of contention and Keone Kela, he reports to camp and he's with the Pirates. What would Keone Kela net for a month of baseball plus postseason if that team does make it? What would he net at the trade deadline? Or would you rather trade him in the offseason and give a team a full season of him? And what would that bring back? Or at the traditional July 31st trade deadline in 2021, where they would get August, September, and potential postseason implications? What would bring back more? And then the question about contention. And Keone Kela is a very interesting case study to look at and to have a discussion about what you would rather have for him. Now, when it comes to a potential coronavirus positive test, could very much hurt his trade value. And ultimately, we may only see him for 40, 45 games in 2020, and then he'll be able to be a free agent. And what will his trade value look like? It's interesting. And with a week left until the first exhibition game and 13 days until opening day, it would be nice to know what's going on with Keone Kela, because he is a very important member of the bullpen. If there is no Kela, he, again, is our closer. It will become an open competition between guys like Kyle Crick, Richard Rodriguez, Michael Feliz, Nick Birdie, even throw Clay Holmes in there. Things get interesting in a hurry without Kela. They can very much so survive without Hayes. Moran can do enough at third base until Hayes comes back either in 2021 or after a positive coronavirus, after he recovers from the coronavirus. I would much rather lose Hayes for the year than I would Kela, because we need him in that bullpen, but at the same time, the trade implications, it's a lot to think about and a lot to go over, and something that we will continue to to discuss as we inch closer and closer to opening day. While Josh Bell was the Pittsburgh Pirates' first baseman in 2019, he'll likely see most of his time at designated hitter. So who gets to play first base in 2020? This year, there will be a designated hitter for all MLB teams. Last year, Josh Bell was the Pittsburgh Pirates' primary first baseman. The switch hitter played 1,116 2/3 innings at the position, but was mainly there for his bat. Bell has been one of the worst defenders in baseball the past 2 seasons at first base. Among first basemen with at least 1,000 innings at the position since the beginning of 2018, Bell is last in DRS -21, UZR -12.1, and is fourth to last in range runs above average at -4.9. With the designated hitter, Josh Bell likely won't be seeing much time, if any, at first base. Not only will this massively improve the Pirates' defense, but also lessen the risk of Bell getting injured, something he suffered at the tail end of 2019, and keep him fresh as he suffered from some fatigue in June and July. If Bell isn't going to be the first baseman, a position he collected over 2,000 innings at since 2018, who will be the team's primary first baseman? Well, how I see it, there are currently 3 options. The first is Jose Osuna. Osuna arguably is the best shot at opening the year as the team's primary option at first base. Osuna produced overall average numbers with the bat in 2019 through 285 plate appearances, the most playing time he has seen in his career so far. Osuna had a 264 average, 310 on base, 456 slugging. That all resulted in a 97 WRC+, 100 OPS+, and 320 WOBA. However, there is room for improvement somewhere. Osuna had an expected batting average of 274, while he had an xWOBA of 328. Osuna only struck out 16.8% of the time, which is much lower than the league average of 23%. Although Osuna isn't any sort of outstanding fielder, he's a massive improvement over Bell. At first base, Osuna has a -1 DRS and a -3.8 UZR 150. In comparison, Bell has a career -8.8 UZR 150. A good platoon option might be current third baseman Carl Moran. Like Bell, Moran has been an awful defender at first base since becoming the Pirates' primary hot corner defender in 2018. Moran is last in third base DRS -32, third to last in range runs above average -11.7, and in UZR 150 -12.2 as well. But unlike Bell, Moran's bat hasn't made up for the lack of defensive skill. In 2019, Moran batted just for a 277 average, a 322 on base, and a 429 slugging with 13 home runs. All told, he had a 97 OPS+, 94 WRC+, and 315 WOBA. Moran doesn't really look like a bat with much improvement in its future right now, as he was in the bottom 33rd percentile in exit velo, had a 267 XBA, 316 XWOBA, and 84 deserved runs created plus. Moran might make a nice platoon partner with a right-handed batter, as he is more effective, albeit still not really all that good versus right-handed pitchers than left-handed pitchers. Moran has a career 281 average, 388 on base, 429 slugging versus right-handed pitchers, but a 236 average, 276 on base, 354 slugging versus left-handed pitchers. With Ke'Bryan Hayes coming up, he'll likely push Moran out of third base this year, which would push Moran across the diamond. One last name that could be a potential option to see an extended amount of time at first base is Will Craig. Craig only hit for a 249 average, a 326 on base, and a 435 slugging at AAA, with 23 home runs and doubles. Overall, not great production that resulted in a 92 WRC plus and 94 DRC plus, along with a 329 WOBA. Plus, with reverse splits the past 2 seasons, meaning he is better versus right-handed pitchers than left-handed pitchers, he wouldn't be all that great of a platoon partner for Moran. However, it would be a slight, albeit small, upgrade over Moran versus right-handed pitchers, as he hit for a 250 average, 321 on base, 454 slugging versus right-handed pitchers in 2018, and a 255 average, 330 on base, 459 slugging versus right-handed pitchers in 2019. But the organization seems to question Craig's ability at the plate, as they left him off the 60-man roster, instead opting to keep him as more of a depth option by placing him on the taxi squad. After all, how can you not put into question his ability at the plate when he only had a 92 WRC plus and 761 OPS at AAA during one of the most hitter-friendly eras in baseball history and declining plate discipline the last 2 seasons? Craig has seen a worrisome rise in his strikeout rate, go from 19.6% in 2017, 23.3% in 2018, and now at 26.3% in 2019, while seeing his walk rate dip below 8% in both 18 and 19. Currently, he doesn't even rank within the top 50 of Pirates prospects per Fangraphs. However, he did win the minor league Gold Glove for first baseman in 2019, so he obviously would be a defensive upgrade. For now, the Pirates will likely give Jose Osuna most of the playing time at first base. I could see him being a solid 270 average, 320 on base, 450 slugging batter with a dozen home runs. Overall, pretty solid production to go with a decent glove. But given Osuna's spotty history at the MLB level, him getting off to a slow start could open the door for Moran or Craig. Plus, moving Osuna to a bench role might end up helping the team in the long run, as he excelled in that role last year. For the next year or two, a combination of Osuna, Moran, and Craig will do just fine. The Pirates probably aren't going to be in competition until 2022, so trying out guys is something they should be doing. There's room for failure right now. After all, the long-term answer at first base is probably top prospect Mason Martin, whose ETA is 2022. And that's what I want Pirates fans to realistically think about, is the year 2022. That is the year the Pirates will be back into contention. 2020, anything can happen. I'm going to continue to say that. And I will release my standings predictions on next week's episode. And when I think about it, of what the Pirates could potentially do in 2020, it's anything. They could be a 35-win team. They could also be a 20-win team. Anything can happen in a 60-game sprint. So for 2020, what I want is hopefulness. Okay? And if you've listened for this podcast for any length of time, for the last 2 years now, we've been doing this every Saturday. If you've listened to me, 2018 as hopeful as could be. And they had a decent season, winning 82 games. 2019, first half, hopeful as could be, and I tried to keep that optimism up. And, there were times last year that I got very frustrated, and we can review the tape and listen to my rants. They're there. Okay, there are times that I got very frustrated with this team and management in 19, but 2020 is a new year. They're turning over a new leaf. And I'm excited to see what happens. But when it comes to a full season of baseball, I don't think 2021 is the year. I don't. I think 2022 could very well be the season that everything comes together. And think about it like this, okay? When Clint Hurdle arrived in 2011, the Pirates had 2, decent years in 11 and 12 before they finally put it all together in 2013. Think about it with Derek Shelton. 2020 is his 2011. 2021 is the 2012. 2022, that's the 2013 type season. It will all come together then. And, Osuna, Moran, and Craig, they'll suffice until 22 when Mason Martin comes up. He is obviously going to be the long-term guy at the first base position. And I really, really was high on Will Craig. And I made the bold prediction that he's going to have a better career than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in November of 2018. And it doesn't look like that prediction is going to come to fruition. We'll keep you posted on that. But keep in mind, 2022, that